Hi there, it's Bike Touring Mike here, and welcome to the second part in this series on how to plan your bike tours. And we're gonna jump right back to where we left off and start talking about budgeting for our bike tours. And a bike tour can cost anywhere from almost nothing at all up to thousands of dollars. It's really up to you how much you wanna spend on your bike tour. If you go on a local tour, bring your own tent and plan to cook all your meals, you can keep the budget really tight. But if you were to go on an international bike tour and make it a fully supported one, things can add up really fast. However, in this video I'm only gonna talk about costs related to self-supported bike touring. And things we need to consider are food, lodging, transportation, emergencies, and your fun budget. First of all, we can talk about your food budget. And your food budget is probably gonna fluctuate a lot depending on whether you're cooking your own meals or if you're planning to eat most of your meals out on a restaurant. But if you eat out most of the times, choose your restaurants wisely. If you eat at local dives instead of heading for the tourist hotspots, you can save a lot of money. Usually lunches are a great option compared to eating a dinner at a restaurant. Many restaurants have some sort of lunch of the day or plat du jour for about $10 to $15. And if you eat a lot during that lunch meal, you can probably get off with eating a lighter meal at camp in the evening instead of going to a restaurant, and therefore saving a lot of money. Another benefit of going to a restaurant at lunch is that you can use that time to charge your electronics and therefore skip out on going to a campground in the evening. Usually there's a wall socket nearby where you're eating, and I have basically no shame at all when it comes to this. Usually I just plug in everything I can while I eat my lunch. Therefore, I can save myself some money on not going to a campground in the evening and instead doing some wild camping out in the forest instead. So are you going to be camping, or are you looking at spending your nights at hotels or Airbnbs? The most affordable option is of course to do some wild camping, but in a lot of countries this isn't legal, so you might have to look in spending your night at campgrounds instead. My preference is always to wild camp, but some nights I have to stay at campgrounds to be able to access the internet, charge up my electronics, and take a warm shower. And the downsides I see to spending your night at campgrounds are: 1, they cost money; 2, there's a lot of people there; 3, you often have to plan ahead and book your stay there; and 4, they're not always open during the whole year. So even if you're planning on wild camping every night, it's wise to set up some money so you can stay at a campground if necessary. It's not always certain that you find a wild camping spot, or you might be in an area where it's very hilly, so you're not able to pitch your tent in the terrain there. So always have some money over for a campground. And it can also be good to set up some funds for a hotel every now and then if the skies plan to open up during the night. You don't want to wake up in the morning having a creek flowing underneath your tent. Taking a fast forward in the form of local transportation isn't cheating, according to me. Sometimes you have to catch up due to some mechanical problems, or if you're getting sick yourself. So catching a bus might be the only option to make it to that end destination in time. And in some cases it might not even be possible to continue without taking a bus, such as in Norway, where they have a lot of tunnels where you're strictly forbidden to go through there with a bike. So you have to catch a bus to be able to continue your journey. So be wise and set off some funds for local transportation as well. Whether it's your bike or yourself that breaks down, it's wise to add in a sum for emergencies as well. If your bike were to break down, you might have to catch a taxi to the next town with a local bike shop to be able to fix that problem. But you can minimize this by bringing a lot of spare parts with you and some knowledge as well. But that's for another video. And finally, we have your fun budget, and this can be things that you do on your rest days, as well as souvenirs or things you buy for people back at home. So do you want to plan your tour completely from home, or do you want to go with the flow? For me, some sort of middle ground is the sweet spot. Over the years, I've learned that it's not a good thing to overplan my bike tours, since I often overestimate how much I have time to do on one single day on the bike. So what I try to do is to look at the region as a whole, and I look out things that I might want to see along the road, plot these things onto a map, in this case Google Maps, and then I sort of connect the dots and make myself sort of loose backbone route. And connected to this backbone route, I also have a lot of scenic routes that I might take if I have the time on that specific day. So I'll often deviate away from the backbone route, but it's always nice to have some sort of route to fall back on. And once you're out on the road, you're gonna come to the difficult part, and that is to prioritize what you wanna see along the road. So my tip is to narrow it down to about 2 or 3 stops that you do each day. And my way of plotting the route is to use a service called ridewithgps.com. And while I plot the route, I also switch between Google Maps Street View, Komoot, and Strava Heat Map to be able to find the best roads for cycling in this specific area. And I know that you're able to do your plotting inside of Komoot as well, but since when I'm doing these really big bike tours, I often have to use maps from different regions, and that specific feature is a premium feature inside of Komoot, so you have to pay extra for that. Plus it can be a little bit tricky to export the KML files from Komoot as well, so I tend to use Ride with GPS when I plot my routes. And you can create the whole tour inside one single file, but I tend to break them up into smaller parts. Since I have a really old GPS, it takes a while to load these maps into my GPS, so I rather have smaller files, but I can still join them up in the map app that I'm gonna show you later. So now that you've done all your plotting, the last part of the process is to take the route and transfer it over to your phone or GPS. In Ride with GPS you can export as a number of different formats, but the ones that I'm interested in are JPEG file for my GPS and a KML file for my phone. And I'm not going to go through how you import the route into your GPS, since I know it differs a lot from different brands. However, I'm gonna go through how I import the KML files into my phone, and for that I use an offline map app called Maps.me. And Maps.me is designed so you can download offline maps from different regions in every country around the world basically. And that way you choose only the maps you need for your bike tour, and you can delete them after you're done with the bike tour. So it's saving space on your phone's internal storage. So I take the exported KML file and attach it to an email, and then mail myself and open the email. I click on the attachment and the KML file opens automatically inside of Maps.me. And I told you earlier that I split the tour into different parts, and now that I've added all of these parts into Maps.me, they sort of merge and you can see the whole route as a whole again. And I also get many questions regarding finding campsites when I'm out on my bike tours. And I've talked about this in previous videos, that it might be a little bit counterintuitive to plan all this back from home. So what I usually do when I'm out on my bike tours is that I look at my phone and take the satellite view from Google Maps and look for a green spot, which usually is some sort of forest. And I can also combine this with the terrain view on Google Maps to see that the forest that I've found isn't on a big slope. And I'm also going to mention that I often look at some apps, and these apps aren't really made for bike touring. Instead, they're made mostly for van life and RV camping. But I found them really great when I'm looking for a campsite as well. And these apps are freecampsites.net, iOverlander, and Park4Night. And I started using these last year when I was on my tour along the Wilderness Road. And I ended up finding some really great campsites along the Wilderness Road. Usually they list places that have wooden shelters, a picnic table, and a campfire. And they're often along a pretty scenic lake or a river. So I really found them helpful when I used this app last year. And I'm gonna do a more thorough video on how I find my wild camping spots when the snow has finally disappeared here from the terrain here in Sweden. I think it's more valuable to do that video out in the field instead of just standing here talking to the camera. So stay tuned for that one. Otherwise, until next time, have a good one.